Good afternoon, everyone. How's everybody doing this afternoon?
Good, how are you?
Good. How was the lunch? Everybody enjoy it?
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jamie Lancaster. I'm the Assistant Unit Head with the Environmental Analysis Unit in NCDOT, and I will be the moderator for this afternoon's session. We are in room 8, and this will be the right-of-way 2.0, which is just as an update from the right-of-way unit at NCDOT. Giving the presentation this afternoon will be Heather Fulgham, and I think she's got about 40 or 45 minute presentation, and then we'll open it up for questions. So with that, let's welcome Heather.
Thanks, everybody. It warms my heart to know that so many people are interested in right-of-way. It makes me feel good. We're not an impediment to projects, even though a lot of people think we are. We do consider ourselves maybe a necessary evil. And so what I wanted to do today was talk to you a little bit about where we have been, kind of where we are, and what we're looking forward to in the future. So, and we'll have some question time at the end too, because I know some of you do have questions. So the first thing we want to talk about is what's happening now. And for all of us, regardless of what unit we're in, our now is connected directly to what has happened a few years ago, which is COVID. Also to some financial situations. And so a lot of what we're doing now is what everybody is, which is trying to deal with the future, dealing with the present, and trying to clean up the past. So some of the things that we have to deal with are some financial health, revenues and spending trends. Our present industry is now we're having to report more financial progress, projections. These are things we've really never had to do on this type of scale before. So a part of what we've been is just trying to figure out what we're going to do now. Also, something that's very familiar to you is workforce levels, staff levels and attitudes. I'm sure a lot of you have seen workforce attitudes change. Maybe yours has changed because of COVID or because of the millennials entering to the workplace. This is something that everybody has to deal with, including right-of-way, in the field and at the office level. Resources. Our resources are just kind of all over the place. Very volatile right now, right? Housing markets, raw materials. Prices go up. They don't seem to come down right now. They seem to keep going up and up and up. And so part of what we're doing is trying to deal with those measures as well. And other things we just can't anticipate, like a pandemic. Who would have put a bet in Las Vegas on a pandemic 5 years ago? But these are the things that we all have to struggle with as we move forward, regardless if you're right-of-way, environmental unit, engineering, construction. We all have to kind of deal with the same general things. And by that, any effect on one of our industry partners affects us all. Engineering and design, delays in design for whatever reason, COVID outbreak at your firm can delay some right-of-way starts. Utility relocations could cause impacts to right-of-way scheduling. And construction, delayed or increased funding for construction could affect right-of-way in another cycle. So these are things we're looking at now at a much greater level than we used to in the past. We talked about the COVID-19 effect. Financial health, workforce, resources. It's all just kind of been expanded a little bit because of what COVID has done to us. These things might have already happened anyway, but it's something we're having to deal with. But we're lucky that we have some positives. One of the positives we found out is that we can go to a technical, digital setup pretty easily if we put our heads to it, right? I don't know how many of you saw the Teams app on your computer many, many, many months before you ever really had to use it, and then you thought, this is the greatest thing in the world. And so one of the things that's come out of COVID is we're forced to look at other ways of dealing with our business that we hadn't had to in the past. And this may make us more proficient. It may cause some issues we may have to look at and say, wonder if we can do this a little bit better. So that's one of the things that we've looked at and said, let's take stock of what has happened to us and see if we can make some process developments in the future. We use these measures to inspect DSS housing, perform comparable sales inspection, and inspect subject dwellings by electronic means. Another thing too is we've also had help from the General Assembly. They've allowed us to use notaries with electronic means on a temporary basis. So we have had some help from Jones Street to help us in our endeavor to keep going through COVID. So what's happening now, right-of-way spend. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but now with right-of-way, we have to give a spend projection plan. What's your right-of-way spend going to be for next year? It's not easy. We spend a lot of time on it. But one of the things we do is we kind of categorize what our goals are. What do we have to look at? And so our 4 main goals right now is the CPL. This is comprehensive project list. Everything that's going to be in the project in right-of-way, you got to count that into what you're looking at. Also, condemnations. We spend a lot of money on condemnations. And a lot of times we don't spend that money in the project spend phase. It's years and years and years out from after when the project's done. But we still have to account for that spend. MAP Act. It's 2 evil words in DOT, right? Everybody wants it gone, and it just seems to keep staying around like a bad cold, just a little bit longer. We have to estimate what we're going to spend on that. And I'm happy to say that it keeps getting lower and lower and lower each year. So that's a good thing. And then our miscellaneous expenditures. What does our labor force cost? What's our print shop charges? When we go to condemnation, we have to spend a lot of money on printing up evidence, exhibits, things for the jury. So they cost money that we pay for too. Also, right-of-way cost estimates. This is what we're looking at as a way to help shore up what our budgets look like at the end. So we've talked to our project managers a lot about when we get right-of-way cost estimates, we got to start thinking comprehensively, not just what the land costs, but what does everything cost that hits our bucket, everything. If you're going to request right-of-way funding, and we're going to spend on a bunch of stuff, you better have that bunch of stuff programmed in at the beginning. So that's kind of what we're trying to get out to the group, which is we want you to start considering a more robust area of things to put into your right-of-way cost estimate. Your land improvement damage to remainder costs, your just compensation, that's standard, always has been, never going anywhere. Well, now we have to start thinking about things we didn't traditionally think about 10 years ago, which is consultant services. We've got to pay for those services. We need to have those services in our right-of-way cost estimate because they're coming out of our right-of-way bucket. Our administrative increases, our condemnation expenses, it really would be great if we could settle for the approved appraisal, wouldn't it? It'd be great. Not going to happen that often, right? So we do have some administrative adjustments that we have to factor into what our spend's going to be. Relocation expenses. You all know you have a couple of gas stations on your project, and you may be looking at $1 million move for each gas station. That's a hit to the budget. We need to have programmed in. Consultant services, asbestos inspection, abatement and demo costs, attorney fees for titles and closings. We need to have all of these things factored in and filtered in so when you request or our project management unit requests that initial right-of-way funding, we have a better shot at making our targeted budget at the very end. Workforce levels. We have a national appraiser shortage. Don't know if any of you know, but I know some appraisers know that. Right now, North Carolina has 1,321 NC General certified appraisers. The average age is 57. That's past retirement age. So we have a declining NC DOT staff. That includes appraisers. We also have an erosion of legacy knowledge and right-of-way. That's true for every department, every unit, every agency, even our consultants, that's true. We're overburdening our consultant staffing by doing that. That's an issue too. We know that. Every time somebody leaves, we think, Do we have a position? Can we post? Can we get a consultant? So every time we do that, we burden ourselves because we take people out of the field and bring them up to right-of-way. So something we're thinking about. Lack of a consistent training program in right-of-way. We haven't had a real consistent training program in a while because of funding, resources, staffing. We are in the process of developing that now. We hope to have it rolled out by the end of February, but that's something that's been an issue for us. And also, again, your shifting work culture and attitudes. Millennials and COVID have impacted your view of work and home balance, and that may be true for all of us. So it's something we have to deal with. The impacts are great, though, right? Everybody has them. Potential missed deadlines for project delivery. You have less experienced and trained staff. You got to figure out what you're going to do. And then you have potential reduction of field agent personnel. The more people, the more administrative things we look at running our program, we realize when we bring people up, it takes people out of the field who are doing your projects. So it's a constant reminder, something we're trying to work through. So I brought you a little graph here. AASHTO put out a survey, and they asked a certain number of state DOTs, did they anticipate labor shortages? And of the DOTs, 34 said that they expected contractors to have a labor shortage. They expected 25 states expected consultant shortages, 29 expected state DOT personnel, and 8 states expected other. That's a lot. That's a lot of anticipated work shortages. So that's something that we need to be concerned about and start preparing for now. So just looking at the labor shortage concerns, you can see North Carolina is in a level 1 category, but look at the United States. You've got some red up there, some real concerns, maybe not here, but in other states for sure. We also have the appraiser shortage. We talked about the COVID-19 effect, and there's been a push to maybe do some digital appraisals, worktop appraisals. This has not really panned out. We know that Freddie Mae, they're going to start doing some of these desktop appraisals, but we've gotten some information that this may not be exactly the best way, that we still want the human appraiser. And I know for us and how we have to conform to the Uniform Relocation Act, that human appraiser is what sets our just compensation. So these are things we're looking at that we're having to take some stock of as they come up. So what do we do? What are our steps? We're looking at various contracting methods to increase manpower for appraisal firms, examining ways to increase appraiser interest in the industry. Unfortunately for the appraisal industry, to get what we need, we may have to push the entire industry in North Carolina. So I know some of you have seen that with CEIs. We're kind of in the same boat now, so thoughts for us, please. Our consultant summits that we're having, we're trying to attract more people by bringing them to more meetings, by inviting them to more meetings like this, so hopefully they'll get interested. And we're meeting with the NC Appraisal Board. Also training some of our staff so we can put our resources on our project where they need to be. We do have some commitments from appraisal firms to come into North Carolina. We're excited about this. We hope that this will be a step. It's still not going to change the game, but we need to make these steps. These are things we need to start doing now. And also we're going to integrate an appraisal module into the right-of-way training program. Resources. This is something that everybody can identify with, right? Real estate market price spike, decline in inventory in existing homes, increase of price of raw materials, supply issues. Anybody been to the grocery store lately? Supply is like that. How does this affect us? It's additional cost to DOT for right-of-way acquisitions and relocations. Not just because the real estate market's going up, but your raw materials contribute to building new homes. That makes them more expensive. When we look at comparable housing, that makes comparable housing for us to have to pay more expensive. So there's a lot of increased cost to DOT because of these. We also have construction cost increase, your raw materials on that end as well. And we hope that this is a temporary impact, but for how long? So I got you some more. AASHTO did a great survey, a panel of all this, of a lot of participating states about what their concerns were. Interesting that the steel shortage concerns, that's about 75%. Resin shortage concerns, not as much, but still, North Carolina's concerned. North Carolina's also concerned about plastic pipe shortage. Steel price, it's a lot. Everybody's concerned about steel price increases. Resin price increases, a lot of concern. Plastic pipe, and as you can see, North Carolina has extreme concern in all 6 of these categories. So just an indicator of what we might have to deal with. For us, we have housing shortages across the state. I don't know if you're looking for a new home, but if you are, good luck. The inventory is short, and it's also very expensive. So what we did was we wanted to reach out to the Realtors Commission and say, can you give us any information? What's going on? And what they told us, they sent us an email and said that the housing shortage is a widespread problem, likely the result of a perfect storm. So their take is the pandemic is part of what has happened, resulted in people working from home in large numbers, and they anticipate that they're going to continue to work from home. So a lot of folks are contributing to the shortage, staying at their house because this is where they're going to work and live. So you've got a number of people who are just not moving out of the market anyway. We're talking about this, she's calling it the Great Reshuffle. And on top of this, the price of materials, which we've just talked about, has increased dramatically, particularly lumber, and new construction is at a standstill. People are looking for existing homes because they can't get or afford new homes. And that's just kind of what we talked about. And also, this type of dynamic, it affects our relocatees. And that's what we're dealing with a lot is people are having a hard time finding replacement housing. We've had several situations where they've requested extensions. It affects project delivery. It affects construction delays. But it's just kind of something we're going to have to work with, and recognizing it's the first step. So one thing that we discussed with them, some information they gave us, is from May 20 to 21, the amount of available houses in the state of North Carolina decreased by 79%. That's massive. It's a massive decrease. In some markets, this meant a decrease from thousands of homes to merely 200 or 300. And one of those was Forsyth County, where we have a lot of projects. We had some serious concern and some serious discussions with that division about what we were going to do. So it affects your metropolitan, it affects your urban as well. Your metropolitan and your rural, I meant. Let's give them to rural. So these are our DOT rural counties here. One of the things you can see is there's a 26% decrease in the number of active listings on the market in these counties since last year. 26%. So that's still, for your rural counties, that's a lot. It's a lot of inventory that's off the market. And your average sales price has increased by 12.2%. That's just money that we are having to pay as we go through the right-of-way process in our projects. That's 12.2% if you look at each claim we have, 12.2% that we're going to have to pay for a relocatee. So that adds to the cost of what we're doing as well. And you can see just kind of how it goes through the year. The numbers have tracked. And here again is just another way that your numbers have tracked, just so you can see it. Our urban counties. These are what we consider to be our urban counties. And this is our market data. This is from December 21. So in here, you can see that there's been a 38.5 decrease in the active listings in housing. That's a lot considering your metropolitan areas, 38%. The prices of these have increased by 16.3%. So what you can see is that you have declining inventory, but increasing inventory on the ones that are there. So that puts the pressure that we're on when we're paying these projects, also when we're searching for replacement housing. And you can see the numbers there. So we consider this to be kind of a red alarm, right? Because we're worried a little bit about this. The reason is because it's important that the department's required by 49 CFR 24 to offer a comparable replacement dwelling to an eligible displaced person if a person is displaced by the highway. Comparables are very hard to find, and when you do find them, they snap up like that, right? I know some of our agents in here can tell you they go to use this, and the next day the realtor says, sorry, it's under contract. Or the person that we're displacing says, I put an offer in, but it's already under contract. So we're having these types of issues where we're having to work harder with some of our displacees in order to find them replacement housing. So when a comparable is found, the replacement housing payment is based on the sales price. And when we try to purchase a replacement dwelling, they're having to offer above the asking price to even have a chance at purchasing a replacement dwelling. This is something we've kicked around with FHWA, which is, should we offer more? If we know that there's going to be a market where there's 3 or 4 people that are going to bid on it, should we give them more money to try and get what the house they need to be so we can get them off and start moving on our project? We've had discussions about, can we move folks into our temporary housing that we have for rent? So we might have some houses that we bought as advanced acquisitions. Can we move some folks in there, say rent-free, let them stay there until they can purchase one or till the market comes back? So these are the types of discussions we're having with FHWA to try to get ahead of some of these issues. Dealing with the present. Improving our workforce levels of staff, that's critical. It's critical for everybody, but especially for us since we are out in the field dealing with property owners. We're going to have to monitor our real estate prices for adjustments in spend. Really nothing we can do about the market, but we're going to have to monitor it and be flexible as these prices either increase or decrease, especially when we're talking about our projections for spend. Monitor the available housing inventory and acting swiftly if needed. Provide those temporary housing resources so we can maintain project delivery schedules. That's what we were talking about. It's finding some houses that we have close to where the project is that we bought as advanced acquisitions and having some out-of-the-box solutions. Pay attention to scheduling and track the spend and improving our workflow metrics. So we've had a lot of obstacles, as everybody has, right? But we think that we've had a successful calendar year performance. So in spite of all these, we've actually been able to produce, and we're really proud about this. What we have here is basically our total expenditures for the calendar year. So we thought we'd share these with you. Our total expenditures this year is just a shade over $521 million. So we've never hit $500 million before, but this year we did. And we've had some over and under forecasts too. We're very, very pleased with our progress and how we're maintaining with our projections. So we feel like this has been very successful. One of the things that we think has contributed to this is several factors. The first factor is we've actually started back projects, right? So that's great. Another thing is that the courts have finally gotten opened back up. During COVID, courts shut down. We didn't settle any cases. We didn't try any cases. We were kind of glad, right? Well, now we're paying the price for that because courts are doubling up. So we've doubled up on some of our expenses towards our condemnation cases. Another thing is as we're getting more comfortable with people working from home, a lot of people, it's just more advantageous for them to go to the projects rather than come to an office. They're more efficient. And so that's one thing we've seen is we've actually had some more efficiency, improved efficiency in our right-of-way process. So we're really excited about that. We've also been able to get a hold of controlling our workforce metrics better, which means we've been able to put our process into a program that can calculate how many days it takes to do this, how many days it takes to do that. So we've been able to get a hold of that and find out where our bottlenecks are much better. Our expenses per calendar year, as you can see, 9, they have all those MAP Act projects up there, plus they have the Winston-Salem Beltway. Of course you would expect. But 14 came in strong too. They've got a lot up there too. So we're real proud of the work they're doing out there in 14. 6 has always been heavy, so you can kind of see where the spend has been this year. And our funding versus our expenditures, again, 9 is right up there. Of course, they've got the MAP Act issues, the majority of them. Also, the big projects have been in Division 9. Division 5 always is has a lot of projects for right-of-way too. They're always very heavy. And Division 3 too. So we've had some traditional heavy divisions, but we've also had some surprises. We've had our number of claims. As you can see, our percentage of claims. Again, Division 6 has a lot of claims. Division 9 has a lot of claims. Division 4 has a lot of claims. And so you can see where we're spending, you know, at least in the past calendar year, we've spent the majority of our time in Division 9. Our dollar amount's the same, Division 9, Division 6, and Division 3. And I bet you can take a guess what all 3 of those have in common. And if you said MAP Act, you win a prize on the way out, because they're all MAP Act divisions. And you can see here our parcel totals. 2,957, so right at 3,000. That's our standard. That's typically what we do, is about 3,000 claims a year. So we're really happy that we were able to meet that. We had 1,902 parcel acquisitions, 1,055 condemnations, and that gave us a 36% rate of condemnation for the year. And there you can see kind of what we spent on each total. So we spent $414 million on, 414 total. The other things were miscellaneous. 254 million of that were acquisitions, and 160 of that was condemnations. So we have some new initiatives. We're thinking about the future now. And one of the things we want to do is, there's a lot of things we've had on the shelf because we've all been working so hard trying to get back to where we thought we should be, right? So we've put off some things. So one of the things we have to do is get ready to overhaul our right-of-way manual. That's required by the feds. This year we're going to take a different approach to doing that. We're actually going to panel consultants. We're going to panel former DOT people. We're also going to have some engineers on there to look at the right-of-way manual and see if we can get the manual to work for us for the next 7 years, and to address some of the things that we've just been through, some of these performance issues as well. So we're going to have an exciting time to have this manual go through the process that's going to go through. We've also tried to reshape our communications with the public and our property owners. This has been a thorn in our side for a while. Our communication, especially our written communication, is very antiquated. And back in the old days, DOT had the habit of telling you what it was going to do. And so one of the things we're trying to do is get away from that type of communication. We want to inform the property owner of all their rights. We want them to know from the start to the very end exactly what your rights are. And so we've put that into a brochure format. We're having that printed and we're vetting it through comms. And so we've sent some out. So we have some of these new brochures that'll be coming out to the divisions. And we're waiting on a second printing now, so hopefully we'll be able to have out more so you can see these. And we're very, very excited about taking the stigma off talking about things like condemnation. We'd rather go ahead and the property owner hear it now. Like, let's talk about everything that's going to be on the table so they can assess all their options rather than try and piecemeal or feed them as we go through the process. We're also going to revise our residential relocation brochures and our non-residential relocation brochures. We're working on Spanish versions of these as well. We have also posted an NCDOT right-of-way acquisition video that's on YouTube. If you go to YouTube and put in right-of-way acquisition, you will see an explainer of our brochure. And so that's one of the things we want our property owners to do, especially before we come out to meet with them during the planning process. We want them to go ahead and see this, get questions in their mind, start thinking about some of the things they want to ask and talk about. We have a telephone hotline for public inquiries and an email. And all this is an attempt to be more transparent with our citizens and our property owners. So we feel good relationships up front will be good relationships all through the process. Now, we may not agree on a settlement price, but that's okay. We want to be honest and fair traders of what we're doing, and we want the public to see that. We also want to build better relationships with our consultants. Up to this point, right-of-ways looked at consultants a little bit kind of like us and them. It's been a little bit of a competition. We want to get out of that. So we want to start looking like we're a team together. We want to be partners with our consultants so that our property owners who are the beneficiaries of this get a standardized and consistent message from DOT and its consultants. So we're going to host these consultant summits on a yearly basis and develop a right-of-way team concept we hope is coming in the early spring. And also have consultant meetings each quarter. We also have just hired a new consultant coordinator. Candace Reed is going to be stepping into Terry Niles' position to fill in for consultant coordinator, so she starts today, as a matter of fact. So if you know Candace, drop her an email. Wish her congratulations. We're very excited to have her. We're also going to start a new training platform. This is something that's important to us. We've got to get our DOT team, including our consultants and our staff, to hear the same message, to hear the same education so they can convey the same things to our property owners and to our DOT staff during the planning process, the engineering process, and even the construction process. Establish better right-of-way acquisition and relocation consultant standards and pre-qualification guidelines. One of the things we want to look at doing is eliminate the requirement for NC broker's license to acquire right-of-way. We want them to take our training courses and become certified in right-of-way, not necessarily in North Carolina Realty. We want to substitute that with a DOT platform and pre-qualify our consultants based on a set of uniform standards and requirements. We don't really have that now. We kind of have a draft of what we want, but we want to set those out so that our consultants know what we expect of them and they have in writing what they're going to expect of us. And we're going to establish a quality control measure whereby right-of-way agents, staff, and consulting our team must meet a yearly quota of right-of-way educational hours. We want to make sure that we keep the education going, keep our people vested. And this here is a little portion of the brochure that we have, the new brochure. Just wanted to keep it up a little bit. One of the things we added, as you can see, is steps of an NC transportation project. We've never really put that out like that for our folks, for our property owners. So we wanted to do that so they can see all the way through the process. And more here. Giving them the steps for condemnation so they can see exactly what's going to happen, so they know there's no guesswork in what they'll do. And also telling them what their legal rights are. This is important. We've never really told them what their legal rights are, so we put it out here. Let everybody know what your rights are and let them make the best decisions. Trust our citizens to make the best decisions. So in conclusion, our initiatives: hold a statewide consultant meeting each year, try and get more firms interested in pre-construction workshops is another way. We invited a lot of firms here. We want them to come here. We want them to come work for North Carolina. So we want to make it inviting and easy for them to be able to come up and say, hey, we want to do work for you. Standardize our pre-quals, improve our spending forecasting. If you're doing spending forecasting, you know that's easier said than done. Amen. Yes. Develop a pre-con budget on a yearly basis. We want to work with PE and utilities. We have found that we can share a lot of ideas with PE and utility, and we're all thinking the same thing. We just say it in different ways, and it makes it a lot easier when you're holding hands with somebody through this process. And so we have really gotten tighter over the past year and a half, I'd say, with PE and utilities to try and make our processing the same, trying to make it easier so that when people go through the process, we have a standardized pre-con method. We also want to streamline our early acquisition process to increase project delivery goals. One of the things that we are constantly telling our divisions and our D staff is to make sure you identify those right-of-way early acquisitions. Get those through. It's going to help us in the long run as we go through these projects to get as many complicated parcels out of the way as we can. Revitalize our right-of-way team. Develop right-of-way educational programs and coordinate the educational program with consultants. That's what we want to do. Also provide education and training to the AG condemnation staff. This is something we're doing right now. We are having a 7-course synopsis bulletin type meeting with our AG staff with some of the legends of right-of-way who are going through what it means when you go into a courtroom, what kind of evidence you're looking at, and things like this. It's very, very helpful. So this is our conclusion. The future's uncertain. I don't think that's a big, mystery for anybody, right? We thought we'd be out of this by now, right? Am I the only one who thought I was going to be at the Hurricanes hockey game every night? Much of our future is going to be consumed by time dealing with the impacts. We may be getting out of the virus, but who knows how long are we going to deal with these impacts? We don't know, right? If we had a crystal ball, we'd be billionaires. That doesn't mean we still shouldn't pursue goals and plans for the future. Even though it's going to be hard, it may be harder. We need to do these things. We've established a menu of initiatives that we want to develop and install in our program. And we ask for our industry partners to bring us ideas or initiatives they think will contribute to the right-of-way program. Not just our industry partners, but our engineering partners, internal and consulting, and our construction partners. What can we do better to help you? We want to be part of the process, not what I talked about at the beginning, the impediment to the process. So we invite everybody. If you see something, bring it to our attention, let us know. Let us find out exactly what's going on and see if we can correct it. We are excited about the future in spite of the hurdles we face right now. It's kind of hard, right? Because you want to be really positive, but you see all these things. So what we're going to do is maintain a positive attitude, try and keep going and making our process better. Since we're just a part of DOT, we're a small part of the process. But if we can do the best that we can do, then everybody around us can do, then we should be a better DOT, and that's our goal. Thank you for having me today. I hope this was informative for you. And there's our contact information. And there is our informational, our 1-800 email, as we call it. And so if you have any right-of-way requests, you can always email that particular account, and somebody will contact you and take your information. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. That was great, very informative. Does anyone have any questions for Heather? Here, I'm.
I thought it was going to be easy.
I don't know.
There was a 1.7 factor. Was that for administrative costs, or is that something that we should be looking for, or could expect when we get in our right-of-way estimates?
So the 1.7 is what we use right now when we say if you come up with your land value is $500,000, right? So the appraiser has determined that the value of all the property, all the damages that we're going to need is $500,000. Right now, we put a 1.7 or 1.8 factor on that and say, well, if this is what land costs, we're going to pay this amount. So we're adding that percentage to it to account for administrative adjustments and for condemnations. Now, saying that, that's what we're using right now. We are working with ITRI and NC State University to look at that factor. In fact, we just had a meeting yesterday to see if that's the factor we should be using. So we're asking other states, what are you using? Like, what kind of contingency are you using for that? So we're in the process of evaluating whether or not that's what we're going to use going forward, but for the time being, that's what we put on that. Does that answer? Okay.
But is that reflective in right?
Yes. So if you don't do it, if your folks aren't putting it on there, when it gets to Sarah, she puts it on there. So we look at all the estimates that come in and make sure everything's in there. If it's not, we'll add something to it to accommodate for all those things that should be in there. Yes.
Microphone so everybody can hear your question.
I appreciate the fact that you're updating all your information. Can you do a short course and have it put on this training program for everybody department-wide to learn? I don't know how many times I've worked in with DOT since 2000, and people, I was in project development, and go out and people automatically assume condemnation meant we were literally taking their property, and we'd have to explain that. And I think there's a lot of DOT staff that we use the slang term taking.
Right.
And it's an acquisition, and we really need to be careful about that with the public. And if we are better educated internally, I think that would help.
We've tried to address that in some of the new materials that we have because absolutely, the word taking can mean, we use it for acquisition as well. Even if we settle, we call it a taking, right? But the public, when they see it, because they're not using our jargon, automatically associate that with condemnation. So we've tried to address that in some of our literature, but it's also something I can address with our field staff too, just as a reminder.
Can I say something on that, Heather?
Sure.
On some of the other projects we've worked on, because we haven't just done DOT, we've done natural gas pipeline, we've done, of course, turnpike stuff for DOT. We've worked in, one of the things that we said the first day was communication is a problem, right? And one of the things we found where it is more successful is, I don't mean this bad, I've been doing this for 30 years, I love engineers, but I think it's better if engineers don't always try to get into the specifics of answering some of those questions, and you involve right away earlier in the process, so that there's you do have somebody there to answer that question. I mean, I know you guys are doing all kinds of stuff trying to improve the process, but one of the things we've always liked about design build, not everybody's a huge fan, is we're in early while the design's going on, and we can make recommendations to reduce a slope stake line that then gets out of front yards, and we avoid 15 septic tanks on a lot and 15 reloads. So, and so that communication was something that was said the first day that I think is key here, and have that dialogue with right away early.
I'm glad you brought that up, Chip, because you've just invited yourself to a great opportunity. Thank you for volunteering to be on our panel with technical service to address right-of-way needs at the alignment 25% plan stage. So we've got, a couple days ago, as a matter of fact, Chris Werner and I were talking about ways we can integrate right-of-way earlier. And we've always identified 25% to be the optimal time because it's when the alignment goes down. And so he suggested that we get a panel and see if we could provide a small guidance document that we could integrate into our projects. And so we were talking about having a few engineers and a few consultants. And so we would love your ideas too if you'd like to be a part of this, about how we can better help PE at that stage to look for things that are problems to right-of-way or problems to project delivery in the future. So we're a little behind the 8 ball. I know we're a little bit far behind, but we're getting there. So I'll talk to you later about that. But that it's a great point. It's a point to the fact that the earlier we're all involved, the better it is later on down the road. And it may be a little bit chaotic to have everybody at 25%, but you start to sort out as you go through the project, and it's more efficient. Thank you.
Question back here.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation, it's great. I've got a lot of challenges, and I think you've done a great job addressing them front on. One thing I wanted to hear more about, besides, everybody's mind is on the budget and the money coming down, but in talking about getting in on the ground early on in design at 25%, another thing we're always looking to work out with right away more is the schedule.
Uh-huh.
And the timing, and it does always kind of seem to be an afterthought on our projects. We always got to give it a standard time frame, but you guys never know how long it's going to take until you start knocking on doors, right? So I was just wondering if you could address some of the ways that we can improve our schedules. We all know there'll be milestones now for acquisition being complete, but can you address, some of the schedules? And
Yeah.
how we can improve on that?
One of the things that, and again, we kind of started and then had to put it aside, but we're looking at what's the average time to complete a certain project, right? So for a bridge project, is it 6 months just for right-of-way? For an IRU, is it 24 months? Is it 18 months? So we're going back through some of those projects and figuring out what's the average time. Some divisions I know have established a template for their engineers to say, if there's a B, it's going to be 6 months for right-of-way. If there's an R, it's typically about 12 to 16. And then if it's a U, depending on the size. And then how many parcels and the complexities of the parcels that you have can alter it greatly. And so one of the things we've thought about taking that statewide, but we're very cautious of the fact that it's just a template. You may have 4 parcels on a bridge project, but they all may be gas stations, right? That blows the mold. And so we still want to develop that and see if we can come up with a little bit better guidance. Part of what we do with the 25% alignment, we hope will feed into that. But scheduling has definitely, it's hard unless you look at it and you say, okay, this is what I think it's going to be. This is what I think it's going to be. From a very early time in the project. So I would suggest working with your right-of-way folks, asking them, look, if you have to give me a schedule, how long is it going to take, right? And then remembering that your utilities have to come right behind that before you go to let. So no more of, you're going to have to put 2 together, your utility, relocation, and you're going to have to put your right-of-way together as well. So your scheduling is going to get a little bit more difficult. So it's going to be more important that you communicate with that right-of-way agent and ask them, look, I need to know how long it's going to take. And then if you have any questions, you can always call us up in Raleigh. We'll be glad to help you too.
Any other questions? Any other questions? Anyway, does anybody else have any questions? I think there might have been one back here. Did I see a hand come up earlier? Okay.
I was gonna ask, but
David asked what you were going to ask.
Okay.
him? Okay.
yeah.
We're gonna think about that, but we want to do a little bit more research just because it's not. We know if we send out a template, people are going to stick to it and say this, and this. So we're mindful of that, and we want to make sure that they understand that there are some exceptions to that rule.
Heather, is there a way, because we work on our cost estimating so much, is there a way we could get an estimate for time along with that cost estimate that would be based on actual facts and project specific?
I think so, and one of the reasons is because there is typically, when we turn in our EIS analysis, we always put how long is it going to take to acquire this project. And so one of the things we've talked about is just moving that over to the estimate as well so everybody can see that. And then it's a good point of discussion between the engineers and the right-of-way firm or the estimating firm as to how long it's going to take to acquire that. So that's a good suggestion. I'm going to put that down. We can talk about that too, Jennifer.
I have a question, and since we're on the line, talking about communicating, well, I guess two questions. Well, for one, sounds like you all have a lot of data. Is there any way that PMs could get a hold of some of this data? For example, PMs might need information of how many parcels have been acquired, and then maybe that could give an idea of how much time it will take. Native information that utilities
Yeah.
need to get a hold of. I think that's kind of where I'm going, that communication between utilities, right away, and PMs.
So we have a report right now that we send out every week and once a month to the DEs. And it's basically a right-of-way status report, and Sarah works really hard on it. It tells the status of every account in DOT right-of-way, what they've spent, what they started with, and how much they have left. And it also says what their projects should be as far as parcel count. If you're in a certain part of this particular project, you should be at 50 parcels if you've got 90 to go and you've got a year left, right? So we actually developed that report. We've been doing it for about 4 months now, I think. And it's been very helpful. So that is something that I think we may be looking into turning into something that we can release to the project managers, or asking the division engineers to send you a copy to put them on that email list, because they will get it once a month. So we can certainly do that, or add you to the list. If you want to be on Sarah's list, we can certainly just add your email.
Okay, another question. Yeah, that's the right-of-way B report that you're referring to?
Yeah, it's just a statewide B report. Yep.
Okay. There are some other reports that I think we are reviewing, but they're not really consistent. So I'm hoping that, maybe there's something that can be created that's consistent between all the divisions, and that some have some information that's really useful, and some don't.
Our hope is that Rome's will take care of that. So Rome's is going to create a standardized report statewide that everybody's going to put in their parcels, and it's going to spit out all these reports. The consultants will be able to enter in live data, and it will automatically update live, so that we will have up to the minute reporting and data that somebody can go in, you would have access, and you would go in and you would pull the report and you would say, okay, this is where we are. So our hope is that when we get to that point, that will take care of all these manual reports that we do. We're really behind the times on just writing stuff down. But unfortunately, that's where we are right now. So we hope to address that soon. In the meantime, we have this Band-Aid where we'll send you this Excel spreadsheet that kind of shows that. But we know that too. Our folks hate it. They hate it with a passion.
Any other questions? Still got about 5 minutes.
Yeah. I've got a concern about the right-of-way sheets, the RW sheets, actually being recorded. I'm not sure if they actually are being most of the time. It's kind of important that they do.
Yeah, we have encouraged. It's actually a general statute. We've encouraged. In Central, all the state projects we record. We've encouraged our divisions to do the same. There's still some work we have to do in certain units. There's some issues, but it's our goal to record everything, especially because it says it on our deeds that we record it. So we want to make sure that we do that. But yeah, that's a concern.
A comment, yes, question there. We're going to need to do some work with the legislation in the next coming years to possibly get that legislation changed. You were antiquated before, this is antiquated.
Mhm.
Yes, we need to get that done. So we'll be working with our folks here in hopefully the next year to get that legislation and that general statute 119 other interests affected by that.
It hits a lot of different nerves, that's for sure. And so we just have to be really diligent when we're doing that work.